everybody. Welcome back to Eggs the Podcast. Today's special guest is Ryan Chute. He's a partner over at Wizard of Ads. Thank you so much for making time to join us. Ryan, how are you?
I am fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thrilled to death to have you here, and excited to talk about sort of marketing and the state of the world these days. It seems like there's a lot going on in technology and everything else, and it's good to hear from people who are sort of feet on the ground what's going on these days. But maybe let's start with a little bit of just sort of some introductions and who you are and a little bit about your backstory and why we're talking today.
Yeah, I'm a partner at Wizard of Ads. I started with Wizard of Ads in 2017. I focused predominantly on service-based businesses and have a really interesting approach to marketing that kind of stands outside of what you classically hear from either digital marketing agencies or full-service agencies. We are neither of those things, but in so much as we're figuring out what the big problems are with marketing and building a holistic strategy. That's what makes it a little bit of a unique bent on what we do and how we go about it. And then employ extraordinary talented people in various production houses and channel branches like pay-per-click and LSA and even radio production and have those things produced for the clients so that we can run the strategies as we create them. I came from a transactional world, though. You know, I grew up in retail and automotive and furniture, and I thought I knew an awful lot about marketing, and went to university and did all the things that you'd normally do to figure out whether or not you understand it or not. And I'll tell you, in 2015, when I met Roy Williams at the Wizard Academy in Austin, Texas, boys, I had a rude awakening in my life, and I was 40 at that point in time. So it's been a very interesting roller coaster here for the last couple of years of figuring out what that whole universe above transactional marketing looks like and how to deliver it at a above average level.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think that, there's a couple things that, obviously in the news a lot lately is AI and what's going on with AI and how's that going to change marketing and all this kind of stuff. And I think what's interesting about what you just talked about is some of those core things I think will remain core things. Yeah. Even if AI maybe can speed up, the rate at which we can create new ads or the way that, that we can approach our audience, I think that, there's still going to be room for these kind of high touch human strategic decisions. And so I'm excited to hear that that's kind of where you guys focus.
It's not just the strategy. It is the strategy, but it's beyond the strategy into the creative realm. There is no AI that currently can do anything more than iterate between the worst possible product that they've ever experienced in the universe of accessible information and the best possible product that's been created. And humans have a brilliant way of coming up with the real deep depths of why a person would choose your plumbing company over somebody else's, why they would choose your insurance company or law firm. And when you get that right, I'll tell you, the message is what makes the channels work. It's not the channels that make the message work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that that's going to be one of the things that folks run into. And I've already seen some stories. It's probably the exception, not the rule. But where people are starting to lay off folks and swap out for AI. And, I've seen it, especially in the developer world. Maybe we can do with fewer web developers now because we can do more with code or with AI. I think it's a little premature to start doing some of that kind of stuff, especially in marketing. But it does seem to me that AI creates sort of a false sense of security. Like know what you're doing, or that it understands your business, or it knows what you're doing. And I think there's going to be a lot of good money thrown out after bad strategy because people become reliant on it. I always use the metaphor like in agencies years ago, obviously, but there was a period of time like when the social media channels were starting to ramp up and Twitter and things like this were getting popular, that all these companies were going out and hiring like their 16-year-old niece to come run Twitter because they just needed somebody who just knew how to run Twitter. Yep. And what ended up happening is they all crashed and burned because 16-year-old girls don't know their business, don't know their strategy, don't know anything about trying to get a return. They just knew how to run the platform. Right. And so there was a lot of undue value put on a person who just knew how to operate a machine versus, all that strategic planning and everything else in the background. So, and I think we'll run into a version of that now.
You're spot on. You know, we love AI for organizing, researching, and fleshing out automations, all absolutely critical components of marketing. But that's not marketing. Like the marketing part here is connecting with the customer, bonding with the customer, and actually having them choose you over others. We're thrilled with companies who are either using, free services like the radio station writing your ads, or AI even. I think the radio stations are probably using AI now to write your ads. And it's meant to blend in. It's meant to sound like an ad. Well, the minute your ad sounds like an ad, you no longer have anything worth spending money on. So you have to not just write something that's cute and clever. You have to write something that's going to capture attention, which is actually the easy part, but hold interest until such time as they choose to buy your thing. And ultimately, this is where a lot of the gap ends up being in AI, is that there's an over reliance on creativity. So will I use AI in my business? Absolutely. Will I use it to write an ad? There is no chance in the world that AI will be used to write even an ounce of an ad ever at Wizard of Ads, because it doesn't actually produce the thing that you think it's going to produce.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think that that's going to be one of the big struggles that we start to run into, as AI becomes more and more prevalent. And I mean, like, it sounds like you are, I am, pretty close to that technology as it's growing. But, there's still a lot of people that are not paying attention, or who are way behind the curve on that stuff. And so I think those will be the ones that start to fall victim to it.
That's
But I
right.
think that there's going to be a point that we reach, and maybe this is just me as a graphic designer who's trying to put out into the universe that we don't want to be replaced by AI. I think that there's going to be this spot where ads will become such noise, to your point about just it's not about just writing an ad, it's about writing the right ad.
Right.
And I think when you can just use AI, and a lot of people will, they'll just start to create ads, and they'll just create noise basically. And then the way that you'll stand out against this noise is, I think, we'll actually revert back to real life relationships with people, or like there will be value in getting the guy that created the thing to do the thing. Right now on AI, for example, there's a trend going around where everybody's using the Studio Ghibli style filter on their imagery, right? So they're asking ChatGPT to make their images look like Studio Ghibli style illustrations. Well, that's fine and good, and I'm sure there will be some IP lawsuits and things like that coming along. But the other thing I think that's going to end up happening is there will be kind of a pride in hiring the guy who actually did that.
Yeah.
So yeah, everybody can fake it, and look, here's all these people that faked it. But our company, oh yeah, we hired the guy. You know what I mean? You
Yep.
want a Picasso? Like, sure, yeah, you can use AI to make a Picasso, but we hired Picasso. Like, we got Picasso's thing.
Yeah.
And I think that there's going to be, or I think that that's where like graphic designers, marketers, people like that can stand out in what's going to be a noisy AI world, is by actually being the expert in those spaces, and being the one who either has a philosophy or a way of thought. And I think that's where you guys will be really strong with Wizard of Ads, is that you've got a philosophy, you have a thought.
Well, and certainly the philosophies transcend time, right? Psychology and biology of businesses, of human beings, don't change, right? As much as we want things to be new and shiny and different, and this channel and that channel and everything else, what we're talking about effectively is channels. We're not talking about marketing. We're talking about the delivery of those marketing pieces, the delivery of that creative. Creative itself can be created in AI by what I would deem as artists, but somebody having an idea that they poop into a prompt is not you being an artist all of a sudden. There's real skill, talent, and a deep understanding of the medium that you're using that matters equally as much, and not all of it's going to be digital, right? And graphic design is absolutely crucial. When you get it right and understand how it actually works, you have far more impact than any AI who may understand the general constructs of the rules of graphic design, but it's highly compliant, right? It's just going to do what it is told. It's not going to have the critical mind that you have about that actually wouldn't work together. This blue on blue thing is going to wash out the thing, and you're not going to actually get the pop and lift that you're looking for. There's technique that we can use to trick the eye, to play with the juxtaposition of color and space, proximity, and all of the things that artists think about, not AI.
Yeah, and you've seen it before in different applications, but like sometimes just the human mind sees things differently, right? Like something that works on paper, like by definition, this is correct, isn't always correct, or might not work for the way that we actually see things or interact with things.
Right.
So it's so I think that nuance right now is presently lost in AI. Maybe they'll get better about that, but it does
Well,
seem like we've got it. And I think the one trick that AI plays on everybody, especially now, they're rolling out these more advanced models, and they call them thinking models, right? So you've got Claude 3.7 Sonnet, but it's thinking
right.
edition. But the reality is it isn't thinking. And so we've personified these things, and we've applied to them this like vibe that they're somehow thinking the same way we think. But really they're just performing data analysis, they're crunching numbers, it's running through an algorithm that some guy programmed. It's like,
Yeah.
so even though it's putting on the facade of intelligence, it's not really. But I think people will be easily tricked.
It does feel like intelligence because it's able to it's able to operate within chaos. Most people don't understand that chaos isn't the randomness of things, but it's the higher order of things. It's the things that we can't comprehend because it's beyond our comprehension. We have forgotten more things than AI can retain in its memory bank. So it does have that aesthetic of intelligence and in comprehension or in thinking, when in fact what it is doing is just cross-tabulating and bringing it down to the thing that it already knew. Again, garbage in, garbage out, though. A lot of the stuff that's in there, just because it's the aggregate, doesn't make it right. And if it's the aggregate, there's a really good chance that it is not interesting. It is just a thing, right?
Well, and that's where I think we end up with like just kind of a world full of noise, right? We'll be able to produce ads more quickly than ever. The Googles of the world will be stoked to sell them, and we'll be moving more ads than ever, and eventually people will just stop listening to them altogether. So I think
it's not that they'll stop listening to them altogether. They've already stopped listening to them. Everyone has stopped listening to ads. No one has ever listened to ads on purpose until you say something unpredictable. See, there's this little part in the brain called Broca. And Broca is a bouncer in my world, right, in my imagination. And Broca is this big guy that's saying, hey, if you're not new, interesting, and different, you're out. Get, right? And that's where all the ads go, down the alleyway to get beat up by some bad guys. And the cool ones, the ones that are coming in and they're new and they're interesting and they're not predictable, well, they get into club imagination. And club imagination allows the thing to expand and grow and live and breathe in a beautiful way with other fascinating things that keep and hold our attention. Some of them are in the club and then out again because they're cute and clever, but not very durable, right? They live maybe 7 days in the working declarative memory of the brain. And then there's the ones that are durable because they continue to evolve and to adapt. They have story arc. They have character arc. They have something interesting. And gosh darn it, we don't want to remember the 2,000 songs, lyrics to 2,000 songs, but guaranteed that you can sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star right now and Mary Had a Little Lamb. Why? Because they're embedded. They've lived in our subconscious and our chemical memory, right? And chemical memory is VIP. Right? That's where the real stuff is being held for when it's needed or used, or whether we want it to or not, because it's created an echoic retention, dusting around and dancing around in our brain. More people don't realize that the decisions that we make come from the imagination, which is the representation of our heart, right? And we justify those decisions in logic, right? The logic for me is like the gift store on the way out, right? Right. It's the thing that you're going to pick up and justify and pay the thing to say that you did the thing, right? It's the gift store on the way out of club imagination. And if you did your job, you got into VIP, made a decision. The decision had zero facility for words. That's why capturing the heart will always get the mind to follow, because the mind doesn't have a choice. The heart has already made the decision. That happens by getting past the predictable, and AI is the epitome of committee thinking predictability.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, and it's funny just listening to you tell that story. I love the metaphor of the nightclub, by the way. And it made me think of, so obviously I follow a lot of designers and things like that on TikTok, and I'm always kind of watching what the new trend is. And one thing I've seen, even among some of the, the people who are sort of categorized as the best designers,
Mm-hmm.
is they're all slipping into the same sorts of tropes, right? Like whatever's hot in design is what they're all doing.
Yeah.
Nobody being innovative. They're all kind of doing the same thing. And what it makes me
Iterative.
think of, if I was going to lay it on top of your metaphor here, is this is like the nouveau riche. These are the people that have got, new money. So they're onto their trend and they're cool, but they're not durable like you're talking about. They just,
Right.
they hit it big. They got a thing. They made a big sale, whatever it is. So they're hitting the club tonight. But this is the only time they're getting in the club, because next time
Yeah.
they'll go, oh, no, that's tired and old.
Yeah. I already know what it is. It's predictable now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And meanwhile, you've got the old money, which would be these longtime marketers, the people who put in the real strategy, who've developed, relationships with their end users and the hearts and minds of those people. And,
Right.
and those people are back at the club every week, and there's
It's,
always a
yeah.
table saved for, Mr. So-and-so or Mr., whatever, pick your brand.
There's something to be said for transactional and relational relationships. The transactional relationship at Club Imagination is the one night stand, and right, if you're super hot, you're going to get it. And I say that in the ethereal metaphor, but also the obvious metaphor that we recognize from all the pretty girls on Instagram who have 1 million followers. That's easy, right? But it's transactional, right? There's no exchange past dopamine. The old money, the psychology, the biology of marketing, that's relational. We're going on dates. We're gonna build a family together, a life together. We're going to do things right, and we still have responsibility as a business to live up to our side of the expectation. We can't be an impetuous youth trying to stick out our hand, demanding money all over the time. We have to be a good steward of the relationship as a business in the aggregate, in the mass, but also do the things that we promise to do, and then a little bit more. And there's operationally ways to do that. All of that is marketing too. Your sales process, your buying experience, that's all marketing, right? Don't tell salespeople that. I mean, I grew up as a sales guy, right? And it's like offensive to hear that, but it's reality, because marketing really is the choice of persuasion or manipulation of a buyer, and frankly, those who are inside your companies as well. Marketing is, you don't have inside customers. You don't market to your employees, but you are representative of your marketing with your employees,
Yeah.
right? And ultimately, when we recognize whether or not we're playing the transactional relational game, we'll see our successes in transactional stuff, but we'll also see our successes way longer and way more enriched and way more durable and way higher lifetime value of customers when we work in a relational mindset. And frankly, a lot of the world is just not oriented to that right now. Retailers are twitchy as hell about their sales for the month, and manufacturers of cars are so twitchy about how many units are being kicked out each month, and whether or not you're doing it on the early side of the month, or the later side of the month. In home services, and professional services, you're seeing a lot of private equity companies coming in with short-term strategies of 3 to 7 year turnarounds, roll-ups and roll-outs. There's no space for a long-term strategy to rely on that customer being back to you in 10 years to buy their next air conditioner or hot water tank. When you have short-term thinkers making decisions for a business that is inherently most successful in long-term strategy, you have a conflict, a tension, a friction there that is unresolved, and that messes up how the business is run for the benefit of the employees and the customers it serves, not the people and maximizing shareholder profit.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that a lot of this, I mean, obviously a lot of different, people have different motivations for why they're doing whatever they're doing. Private equity has got a different set of motivations than, somebody who's a mom and pop founder who started their own whatever.
Yeah,
And, so everybody's got their own things. And I like to sort of qualify some of this stuff as not being right or wrong, right? It just is.
it just
So it's
is.
like, so private equity operates in one way and they generate income through their approach, right?
Yeah,
And mom and pop businesses, live off their company for 40 years and then, either give it to the kids or it dissolves. And that's the way they wanted to do it.
right.
So it's not a right or wrong or a moral question or any of that kind of stuff. And I
No,
think it helps to try and not frame it as like one's right and one's wrong.
it's not.
But
Yep.
like I happen to fall in the relational camp big time. Like this is kind of where I was at, but I started
Yeah.
out in the transactional camp.
Yeah.
And I think that things like, social media and sort of the advent of these sort of quick twitch mechanisms to try and get your attention quickly and then give you a thing and then have you move on. I can't tell you how many stupid things I've bought, that were like, oh, that's cool on Instagram. And, it's just some nonsense from some Chinese manufacturer or whatever. And I buy it and then I will never go back to that company. I don't need anything else they have. I won't even investigate who they were. Just like, man, I hope they didn't steal my credit card information, but at least I get my really cool LED flashlight or whatever it was,
Right.
And so I think there's a version of this transactional stuff that was exacerbated. Not that there always hasn't been a version of this, right? I mean, there's always been salespeople who are just like, let me get this one sale and I don't really care if I ever see you again. I just got to get that sale.
Right.
Although I would argue it's a lot harder work to do things that way. But
It
like,
is.
I began life in advertising and in ad agencies and I started to feel like advertising like for companies was manipulative and trying to trick people into stuff versus deeper, I guess you could probably qualify it more as marketing than advertising, which is building relationships with end users. We were putting up a billboard, we weren't meeting customers where they were at. And so I found that over time I evolved to where I didn't like doing that sort of one-hitter stuff where I was trying to put work in front of somebody in hopes of convincing them or swaying their opinion. And instead, I would rather have something more legitimate with people. And so, we in fact have refactored our whole agency for just relationship development, basically. And
It's interesting you say that. That really ends up being the bent of Wizard of Ads. Direct response works. We can all agree that it'll work until it doesn't. And if you look at the research done by Binet and Field, you quickly start to see there is the sawtooth of something working and then not working, and it hits a ceiling, right? It's the natural demand ceiling of any individual market. And the individual market demand ceiling is dictated by the uncontrollable factors and the controllable factors of demand. Well, relational marketing is compounding in effect. It continues to work today as it will 5 years from now, but 5 years from now, it will have compounded past the sawtooth and the natural demand ceiling. It's both that have to live together. Do we spend a lot of time working on direct response marketing? No. Do we make offers that are brand centric and protect the integrity of the brand? Absolutely. You have to have offers and calls to action, but not all of them have to be, like giving things away for too little and doing a race to zero and all this stuff. But sometimes they do involve that. It's outrageous that we kind of find ourselves playing in a game that we sometimes don't need to play in, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. The missing piece here isn't the brand awareness or the sales activation. People get that stuff. What they don't get in marketing is that there's a third component that they're mislabeling as lead gen that's not lead gen. Your brand ad is a lead gen piece. Your sales activation call to action, that's lead gen. The mailer you send out to the customer, that's lead gen. All of it's lead gen. Your truck wrap on your truck is lead gen, right? But what actually generates the lead, what converts the lead, is what's misnomered as lead gen. That's lead capture. That's a threshold. That's a door that you go to and choose whether or not to touch the door handle or not. Imagine. You remember in the Matrix when all the doors shoot up in like both directions? There's like a million doors in both directions, a white hall, and it's just this stream of doors. That's Google. You go up to and you can go to Google in a bunch of different ways, right? You can show up, looking for the brand, right? Acme Plumbing. You can go plumbers near me. or you can just say emergency plumber repair. Like there's a variety of ways you can end up being in this spot where all these doors are. The doors are all white, and they all have simple Arial font description of the company's name. They have how many stars and how many years in business, and you get this basic glimpse into what each one of these businesses are, and you just pick a door. And some of the doors are a little shabbier looking than others. They've got lower star ratings. Some doors are shinier and newer, and they have more stars and 5 stars. 30 years in business, whatever. And you pick one. And one door you open and it's a lion, and it just kind of comes out at you like the old cartoons, right? There's a lion behind that back door. You close that one quick, right? Then you open up another door and you see like flames shoot out, and you're like, oh, not that door. Third door you open up and it's like unicorn sunshine. There's like little, Disney music playing in the background. And that's the door you're going to go in and try your luck with that particular provider, whatever it might be. Well, what if you had a door that was bright orange with neon lights flashing on it that floated around and followed you everywhere you went, and you keep on seeing this door everywhere? So when you actually went to Plumbers Near Me, you just saw the orange door and picked the orange door because you know that door, right? And that's the difference between the door that you're trying to either touch the doorknob of or picking from a selection of white doors. This is the thing that's missing in marketing today is that there's no conversation about why that matters. Because you can spend a small fortune to touch a white door, or you can spend a couple of bucks to touch the orange door, but you had to spend a couple of bucks before that to let people know that the orange door existed and it was the door of choice. So it's about redistributing your marketing dollars using the graphic design, the video design, the auditory design. An auditory signature, an auditory editorial has 5 times more staying power in the human brain than anything visual.
Yeah.
5 times,
Yeah,
right?
there's not a lot of ads that I can point to where I can say, oh yeah, no, it looked like this, or the character was like that. I might imagine a lot of things or hallucinate a lot of things that I think is how it was when I was a kid or whatever. But
Yep.
there's a lot of those jingles that I still remember. And
Right.
there's a lot of those
Right.
things. You mentioned Twinkle Twinkle Little Star earlier, but I mean, that could just as well be, the theme song for whatever, And so I think you're right. And I mean, I think everybody knows sort of the power of audio, even though it gets usurped by video and all these things that are flashy and interesting.
Yeah.
Audio is a very interesting medium. I mean, we all remember songs. We all know we can hear a lyric or a guitar chord and remember where we were at any given time.
Right.
Where if I saw some video of some guy doing something, I might go, I don't remember if I saw that or not.
It's because it takes up too much storage power, and ultimately the audio signature has a small footprint in the chemical component of the brain that has us anchoring these things in. But when we start to recognize the ingredients, and there's 12 major ingredients to persuasion and manipulation of the human brain, right? There's 12 ways the brain processes information and stores it and holds it in different values, right? From symbols to proximity, color, radiance, music, and even the phonemes of words. All of these have impact on durability within the brain. And when you know what the ingredients to make a great recipe are, you can make Michelin star marketing. And if you don't, you can make an edible cake, maybe. Right?
Well, and I think that just with our previous AI discussion, I think that's kind of where we're at with AI right now. Is like you mentioned, AI is sort of the aggregate of all that was good and all that was bad, but just exists on the internet, right? And so it's creating this amalgamation of a few bad, some old ingredients and some new ingredients, and we're making one cake out of this stuff. And we're getting an average cake. It's edible. It's all right, but it's not like the most amazing cake.
Right.
And so, and I think that part of where the strength of sort of human marketers can come in is exactly in what you're describing, which is putting together a mix of things that are a little bit more, I don't know, I like Michelin star as a way of talking about it, because that's I mean, I just think that you get that from people right now, and it's the only way to get stuff to stand out. And I think that I mean, obviously AI could know let's say all the studies and all the psychology and all the, the tricks and things like that. But I mean, I'm probably not the only person who's used AI to write, hey, create a viral title for my article, or help me write a viral title that's sure to go viral. And what's it do? It looks at all the crappiest viral titles and it goes, okay, these are the, top 100 most viral titles. And then it comes back and it kind of mushes it together and it says, well, here's a viral title.
Yeah.
I will tell you how many of mine have gone viral, which is none. And and so it's not just that. Now you might be able to prompt, if you were a real prompt engineer, maybe you could say, check this study, check this study, check this study, check this study, and then use that knowledge to do this. But I imagine you're still just going to get kind of a mess. Like you're going to get kind of, some kind of amalgamation of studies that, cause it to create a really weird and oddly technical title.
Well, yeah, you're spot on there, man. Like, because there's too much information out there and a whole bunch of it is nonsense. It is just suited to whatever corporate guru has come up with this thing that makes it sound really palpable and real, when it's completely misconstrued and self-serving. This whole idea of alpha males and sigma males and gamma males, the guy who created that fantasy is so remorseful that this has taken life in the universe, that he would, if he had his druthers, would reverse that and have never written it, because so many people with astoundingly huge self-esteem problems are identifying as these things that are completely made up to confirm their bias, right? I want to be seen this way as a tough, masculine, rugged, individualistic man who's no nonsense and blah, blah, blah. It's all bullshit, right? It's all absolute nonsense. We live in a world that is far more dualistic than it is dynamic, right? We are somewhere on a spectrum, certainly, of all kinds of different things in our introversion, our extroversion, our directness, our eloquence, whatever the case might be. But we've taken shortcuts that have led us down and put us into buckets that make us think that we're more valuable than we are in these notions. When what we really just need to step back and do is just think about how we want to show up in the world and how we want to serve the world. And if it starts with, I'm going to serve the world by serving myself, you've already got it wrong, and you're not going to win that game. Do I feel for small operations that are really kind of figuring out how in the heck do I afford all of these things? In fact, we've seen this so much that we've just recently come up with models where we can actually create an access point to have Wizard of Ads do work for very small operations under $1 million. We just signed up a client this morning that's generating $500,000 in revenue, and we have a mechanism in place now that can help serve them at a very, very high level, well beyond what they would normally pay.
Yeah.
But help grow them, and we attach ourselves to performance once they've hit kind of the minimum thresholds.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the, an important thing to call out. I think it's sort of the illusion of social media and all this stuff is that, yes, it's true that, you can maybe go to YouTube or whatever and learn anything you want to learn now. So in that respect, we have more access to information, more knowledge is available than has ever been, at least in our lifetimes. And, and so I guess those are all positive things. Mm-hmm. But that accessibility comes with a short side, which is anybody can post something. Right. Meaning not everybody is great. The flat earthers have just as much, opportunity to share their message as the people who are round earthers or, spherical earthers or whatever we call them. I don't know.
People, average earthers. We just call them people. I think that's it.
But whatever it is. But my point is everybody has access, right? Yeah. And so, and to your point about sort of the gurus who come around with, the different male prototypes, it's, each of them is doing a thing. They're playing a role. They're doing an act. They're, it's no different than, anybody selling any idea on social media, but not every idea is good.
Yeah.
And so, for small businesses, especially, maybe we can talk a little bit about this. You started to talk a little bit about just sort of your minimum thresholds and some of that. So maybe we can talk a little bit. You know, we have a lot of people who listen to this show who are small business owners, solopreneurs. Some in bigger companies and things like that, but a lot of people just getting started. And so, even though they may not be a prime customer for you, I think they would all like to get there. And so maybe we could talk a little bit about just sort of how the process goes, or like the steps they should be taking to try and get there, right? I think a lot of people do turn to YouTube or do flip through Twitter or X or whatever it is, and or Instagram or whatever, and they look at what people are doing. And at least for me, and maybe I'm projecting my own attitudes here, but it becomes so noisy that you kind of don't even know what to do with the information. So
Yeah.
yes, it's there and there's a lot of information, but it's like, okay, so what? Like,
Right.
there's so much, I can't do anything with it. And so
Yeah.
it's like, so in terms of, and I run a small business, it's probably just short of the threshold that you're describing. And, in my case, I'd be like, man, I really would like to cross that threshold and start to grow. But, maybe it's too far out there. Maybe I think ads are too expensive. Maybe I don't think I can generate good enough content. And every time I go to try and learn how to do it myself, I, run into a slew of people who are all contradictory telling me how to do it.
Right.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about even if these smaller businesses aren't necessarily your customers, how do we start to work towards that, or how do we separate the wheat from the chaff as it comes to marketing strategy, developing our business, and looking for growth?
Yeah, so much noise on the internet, isn't there? The University of YouTube, and look, it's not beyond us that we try to participate in that space too, to try to inject a different perspective than many. One of the places that one I can encourage people to do is go to wizardacademy.org. It's a 501(c) not-for-profit in Austin, Texas. They have online and offline courses. It's brilliant to go there and check it out in person, because it is an absolutely magical place. But it really does kind of give you different perspective on how marketing is done. So different that even to this day, we have companies like Apple and ClickFunnels. Ryan Brunson has been there, and Facebook and Harvard University. All of these companies go and experience this, because it is just such a dramatically different way of looking at marketing, from a position of persuasive communication rather than marketing from a way to do marketing tactically. Because when we get the message right, all the tactics make sense. It's easy to do tactic. Tactic is not hard. Getting the message right is astoundingly difficult, particularly when it's not a discretionary purchase, like that $200 or less thing on Instagram that you're throwing money at and hoping they don't steal your credit card. All of these things are easy sales to make, because they can be painted in a very quick, consumable kind of picture. When it's a more complex purchase, people aren't pulling triggers like that. So where do you start? You start with everything. You start with your name. You start with your values and your commander's intent, as I call it. The commander's intent is, how do you see helping people win? How do you want to be trustworthy and show up in a trustworthy way? How do you want to demonstrate your gratitude for this opportunity that you've been given? And having done many years of research and studying across many thousands of different companies, I've come to realize that those are the three biggest buckets that everything falls into, is helping people win in a trustworthy and grateful manner. And what that actually means to you as the commander. What is your intention for how your people are going to deliver that, be it yourself right now and what you'll build for other people to do on your behalf in the future, because those people are your name. Now, am I talking about the Chinese company with some weird, combination of letters that is just crapping out a whole ton of different websites for you to buy their thing 15 different ways? No, I'm talking about real people in America who are actually doing a job and feeding their kids and paying their mortgage. And those are the people I choose to serve, and I'm really okay losing, the other. Ultimately, what it boils down to is, what does your name say about you? Do you want it to be masculine, feminine, soft, hard, strong, rigid, professional, relaxed, casual? All of those things are affected by the phonemes of the pieces of your word. Takata sounds more masculine, strict, harsh, and geometric, where Naluma would sound softer, gentler, rounder, squishier. It would sound more feminine versus the other that sounds more masculine. These all denote and articulate what it is that you do. When you choose a name that is some shortcut version of it, like Excalibur without the E, or other weird spellings, you're making it harder for people to find you, right? Or to comprehend. When you use generic words that mean things like quality or best, or words that are incredibly difficult to own, you're making it harder for yourself. When you have like ABC plumbing, well, what does ABC stand for? It doesn't stand for anything, right?
Used to stand for being at the front of the yellow pages. That's about it.
Right. And it would be ABC, right? It's like, exactly, right? It's like Aardvark Plumbing. Great. So it's about thinking through what your name is. Then what does your name stand for, right? What is it representing? Because people are looking for somebody to follow. Here's how it works. When you want somebody to follow you, you have to be a leader. To be a leader, you have to know where you're going, right? And the only way you know you're going is whether or not you have a North Star, because the North Star is the only star in the sky that doesn't move, which is the only way that you can actually navigate, right? So if you're going to navigate, you have to have something that you stand for. Well, what does that mean? That means it's more than something you believe in. You believe that there are many constellations in the sky and they're pretty and representative and tell a story. Those are all valuable. It is great to have beliefs. It's important. It's essential. But the North Star is the one that doesn't move. That's the one that you rely on when it's hard for you. If you're going to do something and you say you're going to do something and then you don't do it, right? Customers' perception wise, wife's perceptions wise, kids' perceptions like all of this is perceptual reality. We have to take the consequence. We have to take the struggle. We have to take the sacrifice to show our true value. And it is in that core value that you end up showing and articulating and delivering real value. And that's what people value, right? And that's what makes you trustworthy. All of these words exist for a reason. Words are there. Happy, healthy, wealthy exists for a reason. We haven't just been saying it that way forever for no reason, but we've lost what the reason is, right? We've lost the perception of the etymology of the word, what it actually meant. We've lost what mission statement means. We've lost what vision means and purpose and all of these things. And when we start to go back to our roots, get back to basics and really just be critical of the fundamentals and own that, that's how you build a brand. Because you can speak to it and you can talk about the sacrifice that you're willing to impose upon yourself when it comes time to do the thing. We will, as one of our values, never, ever, ever use AI to write an ad, because we're not being hired to give you mediocrity. We're being hired to use a very critical framework that we have developed over 35 years to ensure that we're giving you something highly customized, highly unique, that fits within the familiarity of all the things that we have to deal with in your particular industry at a level that gets noticed when everyone else is saying the same stuff. And bless them, they're using AI, and bless them, they're using, or they're saying all the things that they think are right about it, because they think like every survivor in business thinks, transactionally, which is sales, which is not creating an eloquence and a feeling to the word, but an impression, a notion, a piece of logic that never made its way past Broca. It got tossed down the alleyway and lived in the left side of the brain where they justified it all day long as being the right thing to do. When all the cool kids are hanging out here on the right side of the brain where there is zero ability for words, there is no function for words within the imagination, and the decision making part of the brain, the VIP section, well, that lives in the right side of the brain too. So guess what? All the decisions are being made by the heart, not the mind.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I really like the sort of the focus on, I guess, I mean, you would call it fundamentals, but it's this idea of sort of the human truths, right? Or the things that are what make us uniquely human. I mean, AI for its strengths of iteration, and maybe it is a good tool to help iterate. Um, the I think what you need in a small business, and I think that especially for like a service-based business or something like this, is a perspective, or is a
Yeah.
kind of like we talked about with Wizard of Ads. It's having a philosophy,
Yeah.
and this is sort of what you described with having a North Star or having a purpose, and I think that there was a period of time there, maybe it's still going on. I've been guilty of this, and it's funny the things that I would do in my own business that I don't do for my customers. And so as I think about just as we're having this discussion, thinking about the things that I've tried to do in my own marketing versus the way that I would advise somebody else.
Right.
And it's kind of funny because I mean I'm guilty of jumping right to the tactic and going, oh well, you know what if I just threw $500 at Google Ads,
Right.
maybe that'd do it, but it's not really about that $500 at Google Ads. Like you could maybe that's not enough to make an impact. I don't know, but like that $500 is, if the message is crap, then you've just burned $500.
Yeah, you just
doesn't
lived,
really matter,
lived on fire. Yeah, it doesn't matter what the channel was and where you spend it. Google will spend your money. I promise you that.
Oh yeah,
but
they're very good at that.
So and can you have a message on Google is the real question, because there's only 2 pay-per-click spots. The real question is, how do you talk to them before you get to Google? In an effective way? I would spend that $500 on an impression-based campaign in Facebook before I'd spend it on Google and actually say something that a customer would stop and pay attention to.
Yeah. Well, so I guess then, I mean, it seems like, some of this is get back to basics, but I imagine that as you start to encounter customers, in your case, people are coming to you looking for advisory. But, I work in a professional service business. A lot of people do. How do we, or is there an exercise for, and maybe this is something you guys kind of yoke out of people in your process, but how do you get people back to their fundamentals? Because I do think that a lot of times people get caught up in, oh, well, I just know I need Google Ads because that's the hot thing. Or, I know I need to do X because, I'm not good on social media. I hate it. So I just never get on there, So, but I just know I have to be on Twitter. I just must, And so I think we have a lot of preconceived notions based on the kind of media that we're exposed to. And I don't know if those are always in alignment with the reality. So how do you sort of help set somebody back on a course? Because I guess theoretically for you guys to take them as a customer, they must need to align with you in some way, or align with your philosophy. So how do you bring somebody into that if they're not already there?
Well, a lot of them are listening to podcasts like this, and they're hearing a message that resonates with them, and they're looking at it and going, huh, I've spent all of my time at the threshold, of this stream of white doors, and I'm just another white door, and I pay a whole bunch every time somebody touches my damn doorknob, and I pay even more when they crack the door open, but don't step in, and I pay even more when they step in, and all of those things are costing me money, and I'm not getting any result for it because I'm just another white door. Right? And when they recognize, oh, geez, I'm spending all of my money right here, which is frankly where you're going to spend a whole bunch of your money because that's the thing. But where did they come from? If they walked up to your door because they had seen a combination of your billboards and truck wraps and heard your radio ad and maybe even breezed by you on Facebook and saw something that actually stuck with them, there's aided recall where they're going to likely reach for your door, but even more valuable is branded recall, where they don't go up to all the doors anymore. They just type in your name and select you on the search engine, right? They just go to you, direct search, right? Now, they're probably not going to type in 1-800-GOT-JUNK.com. They're going to type in 1-800-GOT-JUNK and then click on you. So you have to be present where people go looking the way they go looking, right? Now, with 1-800-GOT-JUNK, there's going to be 400 other junk removal companies. Most of them that are going to do it for less because they don't have any idea how to run a business or build a brand. But they pick 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Why is that? Well, because 1-800-GOT-JUNK is going to make it so astoundingly easy for you, and it feels right letting these two rugged men into your house to do the thing that it's the safest and most convenient option, which means that 1-800-GOT-JUNK did a really good job at demonstrating their empathy, their competence, and their convenience. When they did that, they didn't do it by saying, we're empathetic, competent, and convenient, right? Answering questions that nobody asked. They say, just point and it disappears. And then they create a whole notion around that, and the clean, well-dressed, clean-cut, toms that come into the house, and all the things that say a thing without saying the thing, right? When you have to say the thing, you've already done it wrong. When you tell a story about a story, that's a mistake. When you are the story and how your values fit into what the customer cares about, they're picking you because you feel right. And in a sea of options that are all essentially the same, that's Google, the sea of sameness. Well, if we're going to be on the ocean of sameness with all these other players, do we not want the ship that people recognize and want to have come to their harbor? Yeah, let's do that instead. And that's what good marketing is. It's a holistic of doing all three of those things at the budget you have available. Sometimes you don't have a lot of budget. So we can help people either through education and them kind of figuring it out on their own, but with at least a plan, or with our help now with a new kind of entry point model that helps smaller operations kind of start getting more of it right in the early stages so that they can grow faster to get. We have a client that one time was $350,000, and the only thing we did for them for a year was a direct mailer once a month to 1,500 customers. And just that one strategy, along with talking about how they deliver the message and live it within their business, they doubled their business. And then they eventually got onto one little tiny radio station that was happy to have them on the radio station, and that doubled their business again.
Wow.
And by the time you doubled the business twice in a couple of years, now you're on a path where you can invest more and let the masses of people know a message that actually matters. And now you've got a bright, shiny orange door with neon lights and your name flashing in neon and all of the things that have people skip Google altogether. And now your budget has shifted away from that. We have a client right now that's $13.5 million in revenue that does not have a Google ad running. Not one penny is going to Google.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and I think it's actually an interesting point that you bring up just in that example, which is I think that, just like we've been talking so much about homogenization in this episode, everybody trying to do things the same way. I think that for a lot of small business owners, they tend to become little mimics, right? They look at the big companies that do what they do, and then they just kind of copy the message. They start to, I love what you said about, don't answer the questions that people didn't ask, because, this is how we do our marketing. We're trustworthy, we're reliable, trust us, we wrote it down, so believe us, And so a lot of people start saying those kinds of messages, that are the things that they see out there. And so they all become little mimics. One of the things that I think tends to happen too, just with accessibility and the internet, is you actually believe for a minute that you're talking to the world. And so here you are trying to position your marketing, you're trying to do all these things, and you're going, oh man, hey world, I'm talking to 1 billion people right now. There's no way I can't pull some business out of 1 billion people. Come on now. And, so you've got this idea that you're speaking to billions, but the reality is you don't need to speak to that many people. And, there's the notion of, your 1,000 true fans and some of these other things out there. But your example of, just this small operation that sends out their one direct mail piece a month and, was able to grow their business that way. And then just, working in their local area. I think it's a good observation, which is that, especially if you don't have a big budget, your marketing dollar doesn't need to be spent nationally. You can focus on your community, or, if you happen to live in a good sized market or whatever, you don't necessarily have to, go out to everybody. Or maybe you are the one that niches into the tiny little markets,
Right.
Maybe you're the one that serves them. And that's how, you become known. Is
Right.
You're the, big company or big city service in the little city. So I think that there's
Yeah,
a lot of opportunities to talk about things more locally and sort of get out of that illusion or that trap where, you need a Google ad because you need to be able to reach the world.
that's right. That's it. Well, and look, there's a couple of things that come from that. One is that it's far better to talk to, let's say, 100,000 people and convince them 100% of the way than a billion people and convince them 10% of the way, right? It takes time to build trust. That means you need to be in front of the same people over and over and over again. Consistency equates to confidence and that you're a trustworthy source. Consistency is a huge piece of this whole thing. If we don't show up consistently, they forget about us, right? We've got 7 seconds in the average working part of the brain. Then we have 7 days, which is erased by sleep. Then we have chemical memory, which is durable depending on whether or not you continue to repeat and build upon that foundation. I have a little metaphor around bricks. If every time that you see your business, hear your business, a customer, somehow interfaces and gets an impression of your business, that's a brick. If the bricks are periodic, it's like taking a brick and chucking it into a vacant lot on your street with the chain link fence and the high grass and some broken glass and all that stuff. And no one's going to see those bricks, right? There's going to be like, yeah, there's probably stuff in there. It's like, and that's that impression that you had with your truck wrap. That's back there too, right? But then there's the earnest effort being put towards marketing, and you now have a wheelbarrow of bricks, and you're dumping them off kind of in the front part of the lot where people can see it. It's just behind the chain link fence, and they see that pile of bricks there, and John and Sally walk by on their evening walk with Mipsy, and they see this beautiful pile of bricks and go, they must be doing something there, and carry on. But when they need your thing, they're not thinking of the pile of bricks, right? They may remember, oh yeah, those guys are doing a thing. Maybe that's a thing when they get to Google, and you've just paid too much for your lead, but at least you got the lead because you've got a little bit of name recognition. Well, then there's the marketing strategy holistically done. You're not only on that vacant lot. Now that vacant lot's been cleared off. You start taking the wheelbarrows and wheelbarrows of bricks that you're dumping into the lot, and you're setting them up. But you've done one thing different, right? When you're building a brand, you've got mortar, and you put mortar on each one of those bricks when you plunk it in, and then that time that they see the truck wrap and there's mortar on that because you have some emotional feeling to that, and there goes another brick, another brick, another brick, and now you're building a McMansion. Now it takes time, right? You're building something now, but people are recognizing, oh, geez, there's actually something going up in that lot, right? And then it turns into a house, and they're like, oh, that's kind of a nice house. And then it's like, oh, wow, that's a really nice house. I wonder if it's as nice on the inside. And they go inside your house, they knock on your door, they get invited in, and all of a sudden, they're like, wow, the inside here is either as good as it was on the outside or awful, right? And that's your buying experience, which has them decide whether or not they're coming back to your McMansion or not, right? But now you've got real estate in the chemical part of the brain that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger with time. And that big real estate is what's going to get you to the promised land when it comes to building a brand, growing a business beyond the natural demand ceiling that we're facing on Google for an everly increasing price.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think these metaphors have been awesome throughout the episode, actually. There's a lot of good stuff to think about. One last thing is we're just kind of getting to the end of the show. I like to try and give people, something actionable. I think we've talked about a lot of philosophy and a lot of, things that people should be, go and put a little thought into. But is there anything, like, let's just say that you've got your bare bones guy that's just getting started. Maybe they want to try and assess what they're doing to make sure that they're at least on the right path.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've talked about, Wizard of Ads online and, checking out your YouTube channel, things like that, looking for different resources to try and get educated.
Yep.
But is there a simple something that you can kind of leave people with that's like hey, do this to at least see if you're on the right track?
Yes, absolutely. This is a thing that is going to be actionable for you. I'm not going to talk about channels and nuts and boltsy stuff. You'll figure that stuff out. Impressions are always going to be better than clicks in a lot of ways when it comes to the message. Get your message right. Here's one of the things that you need to go do. Go look around and see what you already have for assets. This morning I was talking to a brilliant young man, plumbing company in Philly. And he goes, just in casual conversation to me, he goes, when I looked at what I was doing, I was like, man, if my truck goes down, I'm going to be in real trouble here because I generate all of my revenue from this one major install truck. So I went out and I went ahead and I bought another install truck that I have standing by. If my truck goes down, I've got another truck right away ready to go. I said, how hard would it be for you to put a person into it? He goes, well, I can go into it if I need to. I'm a plumber, so I can absolutely do that. So I said, what you're telling me is that you've got a major investment in a piece of capital equipment that you could tell people about beforehand to let them know that they could call you and you could be out there right now. He goes, So the thing about it is, when a person has poop on their floor, the world is ending, right? So that's an emergency, right? And we'll come out anytime, absolutely right now, because we have a truck standing by. I said, hey, listen, if you're going to do one thing and one thing only, you've made this investment already. You already have the truck. Tell people about it, and that will get you more leads because now they know that you can respond to them quickly, which is what they care about when there's poop on the floor. That's going to double his business. Just by telling that one story, if he had one ad on Facebook that just said, hey, when you got poop on the floor, I've got a truck standing by, give me a call. That's not great advertising, but by goodness, that's a lot better advertising than not telling them and having a truck standing by that's not generating revenue.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's really great. And I think that's a good thing that, a lot of people could do, especially, small businesses and solopreneurs. You put a lot of time and energy into your business. You're trying to grow your company. You're doing all the things that you think you know how to do. And a lot of people, myself included, started a business because we did a trade, right? I was a designer, and so I started a design company. People who are welders start welding businesses or whatever.
Right.
And but we're not all necessarily Harvard educated business executives.
Right.
And so a lot of us are trying to figure out things on our own. And
Right.
so I think to stop and maybe smell the roses a little bit, like we've talked about a lot in this episode about getting back to fundamentals. Look at what you have already and see what you can leverage, from that pile of things that you've no doubt created over the last several years.
That's right. It already exists, and it could be in your brain. It could be a little ebook. It could be something that you could frankly just dump into as ChatGPT, clean up, present properly, and deliver that. Right? I mean, this isn't about anti-AI or anti-private equity or any of those things. It's about using what we have at our disposal, going to work, and actually making something meaningful turn into the thing we needed to turn into, which is revenue, because we all have mortgages to pay, and we're not paying those with likes on Facebook.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Hey, Ryan, just closing thoughts here. Where can people get in touch with you if they're interested? I obviously reach out to Wizard of Ads, et cetera. But, where can people reach out if they would like to learn more or get involved with working with you?
Yeah. I'd love talking to people and giving them a hand. I'm more than happy to even give a 45-minute kind of rundown on your business and kind of what your mix looks like now and how you might be able to adjust it. I don't care how big your company is. I just care that you're a good person. I care that you're trying to grow your business and that you have an earnest energy about you that's going to do the right things and play the long game. My handle down here at the bottom, Wizard Ryan Chute, that's all of my social medias. You can certainly see me spouting off eloquently and waxing on about all of the things that I wax on about on the socials. RyanChute.com is my main site where I have more stuff that orients around how to operationally make marketing easier. And last but not least, wizardofads.services is my niche site that really speaks about kind of how I orient things to specifically the professional services, home services spaces that I tend to serve personally. I'm a matchmaker and a strategist. Right. My goal is to either fit you with the right team of my 83 different partners so that you get the maximum result and get the best result, or to work with me directly. I'm looking for a couple clients myself, but I'm also really happy to find you the right mix of partners for the situation you're currently in. And that comes with a lot of experience with working with the different partners and figuring out what their superstar strengths are.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate you taking the time for this conversation. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.